Welcome, Andrew, to the greatest show on earth, Property Pro Trips, straight from the pros. That's you, my friend. You are the pro. Today, we are talking to Andrew Freed, who started as a project manager on the W-2, the corporate world, ladies and gentlemen. There we are, straight from it. He experienced a paradigm shift after he read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, prompting him to pursue financial freedom through real estate, kind of like we all have. Leveraging his Boston condo with a HELOC, and I believe he might have coined the term house hacking. I'm not sure, but heard that word from his posts. He strategically acquired 8 properties over 2 years, including multifamily units and syndications, employing creative financing methods. As of present, Andrew owns a portfolio comprising of 130 units with an additional 100 units under contract here in 2024. Real estate is still moving, folks. Andrew emerged as a prominent figure in real estate, specializing in multifamily investments, house hacking, and syndication. Acknowledged as a distinguished figure in real estate investing. And that's how I got to know him. Found him on LinkedIn, just posting like crazy. Andrew became the top contributor on Bigger Pockets and featured on podcasts such as Bigger Pockets, Rookie Guests, and Real Estate Rookie. Committed to community engagement, he regularly presents at real estate meetups, fostering connections and sharing expertise. Andrew's ultimate goal is global travel. We should talk about that. Empowering others to attain financial freedom through real estate investment. Welcome, Andrew, to the show, my friend.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. So we were talking right before we got the show here getting in. Before we get into the questions, we were talking about backgrounds and how the misnomer of all the folks in real estate come from a real estate trust, a rich uncle, a rich dad, some kind of fund, or someone died and gave him something, and there's no way for the average person to get into real estate because they don't have a benefactor. To which Andrew said, that is absolutely untrue, and to which I attest. I asked him if he'd be comfortable sharing like a bit of his background on how he got that first deal done because of the heavy lift of the deposit and the debt coverage ratio that needs to be shown by the bank. And he said he'd be willing to share. So, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind, for all those who think you have to be a billionaire to start investing, I would love to hear your take on it.
So, like many of you, I started with the small trust fund. No, I'm just joking.
It's only a couple million. It's only a couple million.
No, I mean, like many of you, I really went after the American dream, like thinking that was really the correct path to financial freedom, going to a good school, getting a good master's, working at a prestigious organization, making 6 figures, buying a nice swanky condo in a big city like Boston. Like I did it. I made it all, right? And then come around COVID and, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, I came to the realization that like, I bought this condo 5 years ago. Like 80% of my net worth was in that condo. My net worth was around $250,000. $200,000 was in this condo I bought 5 years ago. And it literally took me 10 years as a project manager, making upwards of 6 figures to save $50,000. And I'm like, at this rate, I am never going to reach financial independence. Like prior to this, I always had aspirations of being an entrepreneur, being my own boss. I really lacked the self-confidence to do that. I escaped into vices like video games. I was a big video gamer, movies, Call of Duty, like sports, drinking. I did anything I could to take my mind off of my ambition. And at the end of that vice, I literally felt empty, right? And after reading that book, I really had to like look in the mirror and come face to face. It's like, is this the person I want to be? Is this the life I want to live? And the answer was absolutely not. So I took a chance, and I decided to take out a HELOC on my 1-bedroom condo in Boston, and I utilized that to start buying multifamily.
What's a HELOC for those who might not know?
A HELOC is a home line of credit, and in real estate, you have multiple ways to suck out equity or wealth out of your property. You can do a cash out refinance, is a pretty popular way, and it's tax-free. You don't pay taxes on debt. You can also do a HELOC line of credit, which is like a giant credit card, and you can also sell the property, which I highly don't recommend unless you 1031, because who likes to pay taxes, right?
Not a person.
And at that point, I really found Bigger Pockets, and And I started listening to every single podcast I possibly could. Brandon Turner had a fantastic idea for reaching financial independence. He says, if you house hack 10 multis in 10 years, that's 30 units. That's enough to retire. And that seems super feasible to me to save 3.5%, 5% down on an owner occupied 3 or 4 family, do that every year. And by the end of 10 years, I would have 30 units. Like that seems super realistic. So that's what I decided to do. Right. And I started to look for house hacks. I first started in Boston, which time after time after time, I kept losing offers, the cash offers. And at a certain point, I became frustrated, right? And I had to make a change. So my decision was I really need to focus on a market with a large concentration of multifamily. And there were really 2 markets in Massachusetts that fit that description. There was Brockton, Massachusetts, and there was Worcester, Massachusetts. So Brockton, Massachusetts is known for having the highest concentration of champion level boxes, right?
Champion level
So
boxes.
it's a little rougher area, right? And the other place was Worcester,
kind of
Massachusetts.
Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah. The other place was Worcester, Massachusetts, right? So I decided to move away from everybody I knew. I literally had no friends, no network out there, and I house hacked a 3-family in Worcester, Massachusetts. I closed on that December 2020, and I think I took around $45,000 from that line of credit to close in that 3-family, and I essentially removed my living expense. My mortgage was $3,200. Two of the units rented for $3,200, and I lived for free in the third unit.
Wow. Congratulations. I mean, that was dead middle of COVID too, right?
It was. And for some people, some people had a tough time during COVID. I really found myself, and it was really a gift because that's when my job went 100% remote. I worked as a project manager at a biotech company, and it allowed me the flexibility to pick up my entire life and move it while still maintaining that job.
Wow. That is such an awesome story. We've talked about different COVID stories, and you hear from my life went straight into the mud to the success stories because it changed everything for a positive way. I'm so happy for you. I'm on the other side of that because I have small children, and COVID was a whole different story for those with small children who were in school and then suddenly weren't. So first deal was the middle of COVID, and then you got through that, and you were like, then what? Then what? You were like, this is it. This is my jam. Let's rock and roll.
So at that point, I really started to go all in the real estate. So I ended up starting a local real estate meetup in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is one of the largest real estate meetups there. And that's when I found my mentor. He was actually looking to start a meetup in Worcester. So I took the initiative to find the venue, to set it all up and just bring it to him on a platter. And he's like, this is great. Why don't you host it? Right. And then at that point, ended up becoming a broker under his brokerage. And I mean, this is an important thing because if you want to get to where you want to be, you got to surround yourself around people doing it, right? And my mentor owned hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units. So I wanted him as a mentor, but I knew it wasn't going to mentor me unless I provided him value, right? So I provided him value in the form of increasing his brand. I provided him value in the form of bringing him commissions as an agent on his team, right? And then every time an issue came across my desk, all it was a 2-minute call away, and I've got my answer resolved in 2 minutes. That would normally probably take me days or weeks to resolve, right? So that's what really kind of cemented me and allowed me to excel my real estate career. But after that triplex, I ended up buying a 3-plex across the road from my neighbor, primarily with that HELOC and about 20, 30K from stock. And then I found a syndication as an LP my mentor was putting together. I took the last $65,000 from that line of credit. I was borrowing at a 3. The syndication offered at 15%. It was a no-brainer. It's like the simple concept of arbitrage, which you and I know. Like, if you don't know what arbitrage, like, you need to understand this concept because that's the key to building wealth, right? Borrowing money at one rate, transitioning to an asset that provides you a higher return, and just by borrowing debt at a low rate and finding an investment at a high rate, that can create wealth. Right. And that's essentially what we do as, syndicators, and what we do as investors is we borrow money, or we get money from investors, and we transition into assets that provide a higher return than what we promised those investors, and we split the difference. Right. And that syndication ended up selling 1 year later for an 89% return.
Wow. Was that projected? Yeah. That's just how it went.
It's just how it went. So I ended up taking that money. Thank you. I ended up taking that money. And I house hacked another triplex. So I think I'm up to 9 units, right? And then I took that money and I split a 5-plex with my buddy. And we ended up buying this 5-plex, $650,000. Current rents were around $3,500, right? So And this is a little known fact. But when current rents, so when you go for commercial loans, they lend based off the property's income, right? The debt service coverage ratio. The income of the property has to support the loan. And normally it's a 1.2 debt service coverage ratio, right? Mm-hmm. At a purchase price of $650,000 with a monthly income of $3,500, the debt service coverage ratio is like a 0.6. Like that essentially means I have to bring like 40, 50% down for them to give me a loan, right? I didn't have that. But what I did have was mentors who knew the game, right? Mm-hmm. And what he told me was, you can go to commercial lenders, you can request a construction loan, and when you request a construction loan, they actually appraise the property based off of before value and after repair value. And when they take the after repair value, they take the pro forma or market rents. So essentially, the bank looked at the property and like, okay, this property can actually perform around $9,000 in revenue. As a result, we're going to base the debt service coverage ratio off $9,000, and as a result, you only have to bring 25% down.
This is the first I've heard this exact methodology, and I'm curious if it's a state thing or if it's a nationwide thing. So I want to clarify this because I've never heard this strategy. So you said your mentor advised that you approach the bank not for a conventional loan, but to ask them for a construction loan, so they would appraise it in a different manner.
That's sort of correct. So it was a commercial loan, right? And when you go for a commercial loan, you can negotiate terms. And as you know, and everything's negotiable in commercial loans, right? 5+ unit properties based on the income approach. You can negotiate the amortization schedule. You can negotiate the interest rate. You can negotiate an interest-only period. You can negotiate a prepayment penalty. But you can also negotiate the bank giving you construction money to enhance the property. And when you ask for that construction money, that elicits them to appraise the value in two separate ways: before you put the money in and after you put the money in. And if they base it off after you put the money in, they take the pro forma rents. And to your question, is this nationwide? It absolutely is. I did this in a 32-unit building in Lancaster, South Carolina. Rents are around $600 per month. Pro forma was $1,000. It didn't meet the debt service coverage ratio. We asked for a $150,000 construction loan. They based the rents off the pro forma $1,000 per unit per month.
Wow. That is excellent strategy for the real estate climate right now, and that's how you're beating the caps, right? I'm assuming, right? Because you're coming in with that method towards the banks. So we're talking conventional lending, right? Non-recourse as well.
So all this is recourse debt, where it's probably be a guarantor, right? But yeah, I mean that's most small multi is all guarantee, guarantor type debt. And we're talking about, do deals make sense in this market? So in my particular market, all the rents are way below market, right? So I base my rents off pro forma rents, right? And I want to make sure all of my tenants are month to month. And I want to make sure there's a plan to get them their market rent within a year, right? So a lot of newbie investors, they'll just take the current rents and they'll be like, oh, the numbers don't make sense, right? But that's not how you and I work. You and I work, we look at the pro forma where it can be, is the juice worth the squeeze? And if it is, if the pro forma rents are 30-40% where current rents are, that means if you get a really good price per unit and you enhance the property in a year, you can suck out a lot of that equity with a cash out refinance, right? And that kind of leads into like my business strategies. My business strategies, I buy value add multi between 2 to 100 units, where there's a big delta between current rents and market rents, right? I take money from investors at like an 8% preferred return, 50-50 split. And then the plan is, after a year and a half, once we get the rents to the market rents or pro forma, we do a cash out refinance. We get our investors back as much principal back as possible, removing the pref return, right? And just owning the asset at a 50-50 stake.
And then do you take them back in? Do you try to 1031 with them after that refi into something else, or buy something? You can't 1031 it, but to buy something else with that group after you refi them out?
That's absolutely correct. We never try to sell. We always try to 1031. And little known fact is, if you structure it correctly, you can cash out some investors and 1031 some investors, right? So if I have 3 investors in a deal, one can get cashed out, two can get, move on to the next deal, right? Or, there's other methods within a 1031 that not many people know about, which is called the reverse 1031, where you can identify the asset first, close on the property, then identify the property you sell, and then reimburse yourself for the down payment once you sell that asset, right? Or you could actually do an improvement 1031, where you can sell a property, allocate, $150,000 towards improving the new asset and use that money for a construction loan. So you can get a deep value add multifamily, segment some of that money for the repair, and take on a project that other people aren't willing to take on, simply because you know how to utilize these 1031s correctly.
That's a very interesting strategy. So you're saying, so instead of sinking all of the money that you took from the sale on the 1031 into the equity, you're saying you put most of it in, but keep back 150 in cash as a construction loan, and the 1031 will allow for that. They won't make you pay capital gains on that 150.
Yeah, you're under a strict timeline, right? So if you don't hit that timeline, you obviously have to pay capital gains on that amount of money. But if you stay within the regulations, that's absolutely correct. Yes.
Do you need to spend that 150 on the renovations within the timeline, or do you just have to?
Yeah, it's very regulated. Yeah, you need to spend it, or if you don't spend it, you pay taxes on it. But yes, I mean, I don't quote me on this. I believe it's like 6 months, but yeah, don't quote me on that. So
okay, but that's good to know. I mean, it gets you to execute your business plan faster for sure. If anything else,
I mean, more or less, I think the moral of the story is talk with a super experienced 1031 specialist, because not all are created equal. You want to talk with a 1031 specialist that's been doing this for 20, 30 years, because there's so many creative strategies that you can use to utilize this 1031 to buy another property, right? And what I've really utilized for buying a lot of my properties have been HELOCs, or lines of credit. I've got lines of credit on 2 house hacks that I've done, right? So I house hack a property, I move into an owner-occupied loan, and if it's your primary residence, you can HELOC it up to 100%. So my first house hack, prior to leaving it, I HELOCed it and I got $75,000 out of it because I only, I was 95% levered. I got 75% out of it. And then I moved to my next house hack and used that HELOC to buy some more property, right? Or that 5-plex I was talking about earlier, I went to the bank with the first lien and I'm like, look at this. We bought this for $650. We put $50 into it. It's worth $905 now. Can you give me a line of credit on it and take the second lien? And I'm like, absolutely, right? So I got a second lien on that for $156,000. And now I'm transitioning that into a 9-unit value add property that's going to produce over $1 million in equity. So the way that I scale from 1 to 130 units is figuring out how to suck money out of properties in very creative ways.
Like using the property to buy other properties.
Correct.
The velocity you're moving is, I must say, it's quite impressive. It's from 0 to 130 in 3 years is pretty. That's it. I mean, how many buildings is that?
I lost count. it's so they're ranging from 3 to 12 unit properties, right? So right. For my first 10 units, I bought myself. My next 20 units, I started hitting a debt to income barrier, right? So at that point, I decided the way to get over that is to bring on partners, right? Because when you go for commercial properties and there's multiple partners, they don't just look at my balance sheet. They look at everybody else's, right? So if my balance sheet looks like crap and I'm partnering with somebody with $5 million net worth, they don't care about me. They literally don't care about me.
Right, and you're bringing them in as general partners or managing members, correct? So
yeah, it's a joint venture, just a joint venture. So for the next 20 units, for those next 20 units, I split, 5-plexes and 6-plexes, so half or a third with a couple of people. I got up to 30 units by myself. And then that's kind of when I ran out of money and I started raising money from investors. So at that point, I found a 69-unit portfolio in New Bedford, Massachusetts, ranging across 12 properties. And we ended up syndicating that deal, 5 or 6B. And I think we raised $1.8 million. There was a $5.5 million portfolio. And it was an estate sale. So they had an appraisal in hand valuing it at $6.5 million. So day one, we were walking into $1 million in equity. It was a really good deal.
Yes.
And then after I scored that deal, then I ended up getting a 32-unit in Lancaster, South Carolina, that I raised for. It was a joint venture for that one. Yeah, I mean, so that one was a really good deal. I think we got it for around $65,000 a unit, garden style brick in good condition. Current rents were $600, but was month to month. Pro forma rents was $1,000. Right. Wow. So, you don't need a fancy calculator to know if that's a deal. Right. And, it makes sense.
40% rents. I mean,
yeah. And it's like, it's not like the 1.4, 1.5% rule. It makes sense all day. Right. And to that point, I think that's the big misnomer in real estate is like, you need to have some fancy financing degree and some calculator to understand if a big deal makes sense. You don't have to know that. You just have to know price per unit. Where's the delta on rents? How far can you get to that? And how far is it above the 1% rule? Because if I'm finding things with a good delta in good condition at the 1.3, 1.4, 1.5% rule, can guarantee that thing makes sense all day. No way, no matter how you slice it, that thing makes sense, right?
Especially on a long enough timeline, right?
Yeah, and there's enough juice to squeeze out of that to pay your investors and pay you, right? Because as you know, when we're raising money from investors, the deal has to be juicy enough for it to make sense for both parties.
What is your exit strategy with these properties? Are they long-term holds? Are they 5-year holds? What are you looking at? Do you have patient money, or are these investors who want their money back out in like 3-5 years?
So all of my business plans surround around, I'm a project manager by trade, so I'm really good from an asset management and operations standpoint.
You're in PMP as well. That's right. Well, we have our PMP degrees.
We are certified pimps.
I didn't say it. I was about to. I used to tell my wife, I'm going to the pimp concert. I'm going to the pimp conference. Everyone who's listening, PMP is Project Management Professional Certification. The acronym's PMP. So inside nerd jokes.
Yeah, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
There's only one other person I've ever known to get that. Unless I'm at a conference.
So my whole business strategy is finding value-add multifamily where there's a large delta between current rents and market rents, and there's a path to stabilize it within a year and a half, do a cash out refinance, get the investors back as much principal, if not all of their principal as possible, and then both just own the asset outright and just suck up the cash flow for years to come and potentially 1031 it down the road. I'm a buy and hold investor. I think I've only sold a couple assets, and now it's because it was part of a syndication. That was the business plan. But other than that, I've kept everything that I bought so far.
In my opinion, as you should, right? It's like you never sell your real estate unless you're going into something larger. Because once you get in, you're in. That's that first deal. That's the nightmare. Hard, anyway. That was awesome. So one question out of that, because this was the hardest part for me, because I had the big time imposter syndrome when I was making those first phone calls to raise capital. I'm like, I can't buy this on my own, and I need to go ask for money. My gosh, I've never done that. And a lot of money, like not $10. You're talking $100,000 each investor, because in California, real estate's twice the price. We're like $230 a door over here in like C areas. So what was it like that first time calling? Like, was it easy for you? Did your mentor help you? How'd you get yourself going? Like, how did that first call go, and how did you first approach your first investors to your first syndication deals?
Well, prior to my first syndication deal, I've done it all with my own money, right? So no ifs, ands, or buts. It was as awkward as I possibly could. I've never took money before. I was very, I felt,
I'm only laughing because I understand. No,
I took pride in being self-reliant, right? I really took a lot of pride in that. I'm a project manager like you. We're very accountable people, right? But the strategy that I really took was I made a list of everybody that I knew that would invest. And I made it a goal to reach out to 3 people a day. And by the end of a month, by the end of 2, I think we were doing due diligence for around 3 months. I reached out to 300 people, right? Yeah, of course, some people signed me off. Some people, shut me down. But I did I think for my first syndication, I ended up raising around $500,000, which I thought that was pretty good for my first go around. And combined with that, we did a webinar, and we did like a slide deck, right? We did like an investment package. Hired a syndication attorney to make sure we were compliant with all the rules, right? And we just started raising. But that was honestly one of the most challenging parts. Like, I got brought in the deal because at that point I was on bigger pockets. My buddy found the deal. He found an amazing deal, but he had no means of closing it. So he thought about me because I was known as the multifamily guy, right, in my area. And he brought the deal to me with my role being primarily to raise the capital. So I put my name on the line to raise the capital, right? Come around 3 weeks before close, me and my main partner, Zach Gray, we ended up only raising about $1 million, and we needed to raise $1.8 million, right? So at that point, we had to make a decision, right? Do I want 100% of nothing, or do I want something of something, right? And at that point, thankfully, I had a really good network, right? I ended up calling my mentor. Within 4 phone calls, he raised the remaining $800,000. Obviously, gave him a good chunk of equity to do that, but we ended up closing the deal. Right.
Phone a friend.
Phone a friend. Yep. And it worked. It worked out great. Fantastic partner. Learned a ton from him. And honestly, we have an all-star team, and those and that syndication is going really well. We ended up buying 12 properties, and we took a hybrid approach, like half fix and flip, half buy and hold. So essentially, it's 12 properties encompassing 69 units. So what we're doing is we're selling off the smaller properties, the 4 the biplexes to retail investors and getting the max price per unit, getting our investors back their principal as quickly as possible, because that increases the return if you get their principal back as quickly as possible, while keeping the larger properties and stabilizing them because they have a better cash and cash return. Because it's like, obviously bigger buildings perform better than smaller buildings, right?
Exactly. It's the same challenge to close a 5-unit as it is to close a 50-unit. Aside from the unit by unit inspections, I mean, that's the only thing that's going to increase your lifetime. Aside for the inspection, it is the same amount of work. And,
Totally.
the mind, the bigger, the better if you can get the money.
Totally.
But you said something in there though that I wanted to point out to our listeners is 0% of 0 is 0 on your first deal. So I know people that are like, well, I'm not going to make any money up. I'm only going to get 10% equity after all this work, because well, sometimes you end up with but you have 10% of something you didn't have before. That's how I explain. That first deal, you do whatever it takes to get in there, and you do all the work and do as much as you can. If you end up with 10% equity, then you end up with 10% equity and go on to the next one. Now you just made, guess what? A whole bunch of friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's your point. I think a lot of people only think about the monetary benefit, right? But there's so many benefits outside of the monetary benefit, right? Maybe a lot of my equity got cut off, but I built up a ton of credibility. I built up a ton of trust. I built up a big network willing to give me money now that they see I've done these larger deals, right? So I built up a ton of network capital that wasn't there before. So I'm so happy I did that deal, not because of the monetary benefit, because of the network capital that I created in that deal.
Great, correct. And there's also the side benefits that people don't think about too. If you're doing full upgrades, there's the cost segregation. Well, at least here in California, we have these things called cost segregations. I think it's through California. Do you guys have that on your side, on your coast? Take all the depreciation at once on all your CapEx improvements. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we absolutely do cost segregation studies. I believe there's a bill in the Senate right now trying to get the 100% depreciation back for the next 2 years or so. It's currently in the process of being passed. Because for people that don't know, cost segregation study during COVID, we will be able to use 100% depreciation on items less than 10 years old or something like that, approximately. And then it dropped to 80% this year. But this new law is going in place to give you back 100, more or less. What that means is you can essentially you can write off 20 to 30% of your property in year one and get a huge tax write-off. And for people like Trevor, I mean, I'm not this. I hopefully will be this soon. He's a real estate professional, and he can utilize all those paper losses to offset all of his active gains, right? So if he made $100,000 flipping houses, got $100,000 in cost seg losses, you know how much money in taxes he's paying on the $100,000? Zero. Right?
And you, as the managing partner, are the real estate professional, can get that as well. If your cost seg guy didn't explain that to you, you should be able. You can get those benefits as well.
I still have my W-2, my friend.
You do. Yeah. Well, I'm W-2'd as well, but you can still own companies and be W-2'd. You can take the taxes as an owner, because the cost seg on my side. I'm not a broker, but I'm a partner in a property management company, and you just have to be a real estate professional. And this was from my lawyer. He's like, you can take that cost segregation. If you're the single partner, you can get a single general GP, you get it all.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a W-2, it depends on how many hours you contribute.
Yeah, it must be a state thing. Yeah,
if you could be a rep, but yeah, I mean, I hope to be a rep soon for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that is a substantial amount of tax credit. Let me tell you, because you could have no money in the deal and have your percentage of it. Doesn't matter how much it's based on the percentage you have of the GP, but it doesn't go away. So the tax credit stays on file. You can just take that. You can take that 10% of it this year. Then next year you can take that 10% if you have 10% of it.
Yeah, it carries forward. Carry forwards forever. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of those side benefits. And you can write expenses off to the building. Say I bought a building in Las Vegas, and then I went to Vegas to go look at it. If I stayed in a hotel in Vegas, I can write that off towards the building, because I'm there to look at the building, do work at the building, and I'm the GP who has the ability to do so.
Yeah, and I mean, and then you can combine that cost seg with cash out refinance, which is also tax free. You don't pay taxes on debt, right? Yeah. And then maybe when you suck out all that depreciation, At that point, you can 1031 to another property, do that cost seg all over again.
Started it again.
Do a cash out refi, pay no taxes on any of that.
Right. And you just
right?
keep going.
Like,
right.
So I mean, the amazing thing about real estate is like $250,000 in real estate to me is the equivalent of a doctor's salary who makes $400,000 because it's $250,000 in real estate. If you play it right, is post-tax money. Like doctors, they pay a 45 to 50% tax rate. Their $400,000 gets reduced to $200,000. Who would you rather be in that scenario? The real estate guy who makes $250 or them making $200?
Right,
you're
working on those right, and you're working for the government or less. Yeah, hourly. No, I 100% agree with you. So, COVID was literally it was COVID is how you got involved in real estate, right? That was like kind of the aha. You read someone recommended you the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and you're like, I'm going for it. That's how it went.
I literally tears were going down my face reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, realizing I've been doing it wrong for the last 30 years. I'm figuring this out now.
I got it wrong, Ma.
I got it wrong the whole time. And I mean, that brings up another point is like society intentionally teaches us the wrong way to do finance. They teach us to hold our money in a 401k, give it to somebody for 30, 40 years, never look at it ever again. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're taking points on it every single year, right? Put all of your money in your primary residence where it provides you zero return on net worth, right? Like the key to financial independence is getting a good return on your net worth. If you have $1 million net worth and you're getting you're getting an 8% return on that net worth, that's 80 grand a year, right? But if you have $1 million net worth and all of your money is locked up in 401k and your primary residence, you know what your return on net worth is? Zero, right? Your path to financial independence is not even possible at that point.
Dark and stormy.
unless you do what I did, you take out a HELOC, you take a loan against your 401k, use that to buy cash flowing assets, businesses, real estate, whatever can provide you cash flowing assets, then there is a foreseeable path to that.
Completely agree. It's that first step, right? Like, I'm going to take out a HELOC and buy an apartment building with this because the bank's like, oh, you could use this to improve your house. Well, of course. I'm going to use this to improve my house financial situation. Right? I mean, so you're going to go use it for real estate, but then you're going to pay variable interest rates on that, and that scares people.
The other little known thing about lines of credit, which not many people talk about, is like, especially if you're going for residential property, when it comes to your debt to income ratio, lines of credit, banks only take into account the interest only payment, right? So I could borrow against a $200,000 line of credit, and they're only going to take the interest only payment and not the principal, meaning that I can lever that money for far, far more money to loan against to get more residential property. Right. So that was how I was able to house hack 3 house hacks, was because I did draw from this $200,000 line of credit, but I didn't get dinged for the whole $200,000. I only got dinged for the interest only period, which was $1,000 a month. Right. But if there's principal plus interest in that, that would hit that like $2,000 would hit my DTI, and it would have been that much more challenging to get pre-approved.
As you know, and I'm just stating it to round out the HELOC conversation, credit card debt and HELOC debt are not treated equally, not in the eyes of FICO or in lenders. And a lot of people do not understand that. They're like, oh, you're going to rack up all this debt. I'm like, it's different debt. Yeah, it's going to be less percentage. It can't go up as fast, but it doesn't show up on your credit score. Not the same way. It's not credit card debt. It shows up as levered, it shows up on there. But if you have a $200,000 in credit card debt, your credit score is going to sink. Way lower than if you have a $200,000 HELOC. It actually might go up. Do you find the same experience the misnomer, since we've been talking about those a lot, the misnomer of credit card versus HELOC?
You're absolutely right. When I look at my credit card report, I have all my HELOCs drawn, and that's intentional, by the way, because I don't want to pay them off and have the government pull them, or the banks pull them during a recessionary period. But you're absolutely right. With HELOCs, my credit utilization doesn't hit my credit utilization, which is the largest impactor on credit. Right, but credit cards do, right? Like my credit utilization rate is like a 0% right now, yet I got $275,000 drawn on a line of credit.
Right. So my 800 and something.
Yeah, my credit's like 750 right now. Oh, yeah, But if that money was on credit cards, I guarantee my credit would be absolute crap.
And it would be. It would be. No, I've been there. So Talk about what your portfolio looks like today. What is your 5-year plan from this? Is this you keep going like this? Are you on your way to 1,000 units and gonna sit on buy your yacht and sail off into the sunset at 35 or 30? What's it look for you? What's it look like, Andrew?
So my 10-year plan is I want to syndicate 10,000 units. I want to actively own
10,000
400 units. I want to actively own 400 units. I want to travel to 100 countries. I want to write a book. I want to help 10,000 people reach financial independence. That's kind of my overarching 10-year goal. Yeah, I mean, I'm just having fun with this. I feel like it's a giant game Monopoly,
It
and I
is.
just enjoy it every single day, and to be frank, like, I love this because I especially loved it during 2023 when everybody was running from real estate. I was running towards it. I bought 100 units in 2023, right? And I have over 80, 90 units under contract at this very moment. I actually closed 12 yesterday, right?
Congrats.
So thank you. Thank you. So I love this environment. I love the fact that, people are running away because I'm running towards. I mean, you know what Warren Buffett says, when get greedy, when others get fearful. And that's exactly what you and I are doing at this very moment,
Yeah, right. I'm looking at writing an offer today or tomorrow. I'm just like there's a 9 unit and a 6 unit that are sitting around in my area, and we've been looking at, and the banks are quick to give terms. They're lending faster, even though the interest rates are higher. But instead of 90 days, they're like in 30 days on conventional lending. I've never seen it. Like Chase is like giving me that's unheard of. And they're negotiating on the prepays because no one's lending, or no one's borrowing, I should say. So
Yeah.
so there's advantages to this market for sure. And there's not that many buyers out there. There's not very much competition because everyone's like, oh, it's too far. I'm not touching the market. Well, okay, stay out.
Yeah, and I mean, and
Stay out,
and you
please.
and you bring up a lot of good points in the fact that, like, especially when seeking commercial loans, your terms have to align with your business plan, right? If your business plan is to do a cash flow refi in year and a half, your top term you need is no prepayment penalty, right? If you're taking on a big value add project, value add multifamily, one of your most important terms would be construction funds, right? If you're taking on a completely stabilized asset, really nothing to do, one of your most important terms would be amortization and interest rate, right? Because you're trying to make that daily cash flow, right? So aligning the terms with the business plan is incredibly important. And I don't know where you're at, but where I'm at, small local credit unions, it's actually against their charter to have prepayment penalties.
Really?
It's literally against their charter in Massachusetts. So I specifically target those banks because I don't want to pay the prepayment penalty. My entire business plan is to do a cash out refi. I'm not going to take on a 321 or a 54321 prepayment penalty. That makes absolutely no sense. That doesn't align with what I'm trying to do.
I'll have to check into that because I have not heard of or experienced credit union loans for multifamily with no prepayment penalties. I've seen credit union and private equity or private like hard money loans allow that, but not on like a credit union. Is not. I guess it's. Yeah, I'm not heard from a credit union. That's I hope that's true here. I will look into that when this is done.
Massachusetts has very competitive commercial loans. So many banks around here lend on commercial properties. I know there's other parts in the nation that's not the case. Like I bought a 32 unit in Lancaster, South Carolina. I think we called like 50 banks, and we only found one bank that would give us construction money, and they gave us an 8% rate, right? But it still made sense all day. It's made sense. I think we paid $65,000 a year for that. They rented upwards of $1,000, and the building was in great shape. So even at 8%, we were still projecting a 12, 13% cash on cash return, right?
Why do you think they're not lending? What is just in your opinion? I know it's just nothing but a moonshot of it, but why aren't banks lending on something that makes that much sense?
It's definitely the environment down in South Carolina. I believe most banks do residential and not commercial for some reason. I'm not quite positive on why. But
they're just like, sorry, we're not lending.
Yeah,
sorry, we don't
yeah.
do that.
Or they're like, oh, you got to bring 40% down. And I buy all my stuff at 25% down. So I'm like, I ain't bringing 40% down.
I need to move to Massachusetts because our LTVs over here, I mean, they're offering like 39%.
Because your price per unit is so high, your debt service coverage ratio has to be satisfied, right? Like, I specifically focus on tertiary markets outside major metropolitan areas that have a large concentration of multi, where you can regularly get above the 1%, right? It's easier to find a good deal and a good multifamily. There's a lot of multifamily. It's easier to make something cash flow when you're well above the 1% rule, and to meet that debt service coverage ratio needed to get that 25% down.
But you actually moved to the area. That was
I did.
I think that was the key. I would say, because I'm always like, I want to be within about 20 minutes driving of all my properties, at least the ones I syndicate, and so I can get to
Yes.
that thing and make sure somebody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Totally. Or you got to have some trusted boots on the ground that can do that.
Really,
Well, either or, right? And I did that with a 32 in Lancaster. My buddy moved down to Charlotte, 40 minutes from the property. We ended up giving him a good chunk of the equity because we need somebody on the ground that could asset manage that we absolutely trusted, right? And I also did that with the 11 unit in North Adams, which is 2 hours west of me. We trust this guy, good operator, so we gave him a good amount of our equity so he can be the trusted boots on the ground to make this asset perform, right? So I think that goes back to your point. I'd rather have something of a pie than 100% of no pie, right?
Right. And you don't want. I mean, I'm a partner in a property management company, but I'm saying I'm going to say it. You don't want your property management company to be your only eyes and ears. Like, you want somebody who's part of a stake in it. This is my opinion. I've seen the most success when you have somebody on the ground within an hour away. That's reasonable. Maybe half an hour, depending on traffic. Everything's an hour away in LA. That has stake in the success of the project.
You bring up a good point. When it comes to real estate, everybody is incentivized to make money off you. The property management company, the real estate agent, the contractors, like, everybody is incentivized to make money off you. And as you and I both know, this world runs off incentives, right?
Right, exactly.
I'm not saying, I mean, obviously people are ethical in there. I'm not saying they're not. Right. But it's in real estate, it's very important to trust but verify. That's like one of the most important rules to be successful in real estate,
Trust but verify. That's correct. And you need that GP, that general partner who wants the money from this thing when it succeeds. Property management company is going to do well for you. It's just not going to be the same as the guy who's going to show up on a Sunday afternoon and walk the property, pick up the trash that's there, just see what's going on, what's happening, and care. And really care, and send pictures to you and say, hey, this is what's going on. I have some ideas. It's just property management companies, we don't have even the bandwidth for something like that, because we can't be working 24/7. It's logistics.
And it's very important to align your incentives with the investors as well. Like, a lot of my structures, like an 8% return, 50-50 split, right? So I don't get paid until my investors, my partners, my JV partners make that first 8%. Right. So I have to make that asset perform before I even get paid. So I'm incentivized to make that thing perform. I'm incentivized to find 3 quotes for everything and get the cheapest thing possible, the cheapest quote possible. Right. Because my livelihood depends on getting them their return.
Right. Their success is yours. Right. Exactly. And so, do you not charge an acquisition fee at close?
I do not charge an acquisition fee. I do not charge an asset management fee. If I'm self-managing in it, me and my partners will take 7-8%, but we would have paid that to a third party anyway. We all probably would have paid more, to be frank, right? So, so we do not. Our 100% of our incentives are aligned with the investor.
You hear that, folks? If you're in the East Coast, that's a good deal. West Coast, we're 1% acquisition fees on close, and then 30-70. But we give 70 to the members because things are more expensive here. 70%, and then GP gives 30%. So it kind of evens out.
Yeah. Do you have a pref? Do you have a pref that you give?
7% pref.
Oh, okay.
So 7% pref. The members get 70% of the equity. General partner gets 30%. I'm also a member in most of my deals as well. So that's why the memberships, the benefits are heavy on the membership side, because I'm a member as well. And no capital, like refinance fees or anything like that. I don't take those kinds of fees. And I don't believe there's a disposition fee as well, because I'm just going to get my money. We're all going to get our money from the appreciation when it sells, but we're not looking to sell ever. We're treating it as our 401ks over here. My group is all long-term friends. Everyone's entrepreneurs. No one's got real 401ks, and no one really trusts the market anyway. We don't like the stock market because there's no logic. Like, we could put $100,000 in the stock market and it goes down 20 points, and now you have $80,000. Where did that $20,000 go? I ask brokers that, like big stockbrokers that, like, tell me where it went. I want to know exactly where did it go. Not just it went down, it went away. No, where'd it go? Because I can go to my apartment building, if it's making 20 grand less, I can tell you exactly what's going on. Why? Because there's a leak, or there's a eviction, or there's whatever, and I can go there and fix it. I can't go into Apple and tell them, hey, I lost 20 grand because your stock went down. I need you to like optimize this department and do this, cut some expenses. What's up?
You have no control. You have no control.
I mean, and you're still working too, right, Andrew? Did you say you're still W-2 full time right now too?
I'm a project manager at a biotech company. I self-manage 30 units. I host 2 local real estate meetups. I'm an investor-focused agent. I have 3 agents under me. I'm a GP and 2 syndications. Ooh, right? So I do a lot. But I have a really good team in place to help me support this structure. Like I got 3 virtual assistants. I have an assistant property manager that manages all the tenant communications, all meeting with contractors, right? I have an executive assistant. I have 3 investor-focused agents that work under me and handle a lot of my buyer leads, and I take on the listings. So I have a fantastic team in place that allow me to do all of these jobs.
That's awesome. Married, Andrew? Kids?
That's the one thing I wouldn't be able to support. I'm
there
single.
It is. There's where the extra time comes from.
I'm single. I had to be something. That was intentional, my friend.
Hey, I waited until I was 29. I traveled the world. Saw 29 countries, and then I'm like, I'm gonna wait till I'm 30. And I was like 29 and a half. And my wife's like, put up or shut up, man. Like, we're getting married. I'm going. I'm getting out of here. It's like, all right. Shakingly, I proposed. I'm so scared. It's kind of on my mind when I proposed, but it was intentional. Up to that time, I've been intentionally traveling, not intentionally doing real estate like you are. Backpacking for 7 years.
Sounds like a fun life.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was my 20s, right? It was just those are the years that things didn't matter as much. Most of my friends that got jobs, and I came back after that time, they still had those jobs, and not much had changed. And I was like, all right, I can work now and start doing something. And we're all the same level still. So things like the 20s are kind of like the figure it out time in my mind. So I'm like, man, what if I don't make it to like 50 to retire? If I want to go travel now. So I took my retirement like in my 20s. And again, not on a trust fund of any kind, everyone here. It's not because I had a bunch of money. No, I went on $20 a day is what I lived on, and backpacked, like slept on the side of the road in my sleeping bag with an tent kind of style, like that kind of backpacking, for not hotels and bourgeois stuff. It was $20 a day and a credit card with a limit of like $500. True, just dirt bag.
Hey, but you made it happen, and I'm sure it prepared you to be successful in real estate, because now you know how to bootstrap, right? You bootstrap for 7-8 years, right?
Yeah, right. You just like beg, borrow, not steal, but just beg, borrow, and plead, I guess you could say, and never say no to an invitation or an offer, and just, hey, you want to crash at our place? Like, yes, I do. Thank you. Save me extra $5 at the hostel. Anyway, I digress. We've talked about all the awesome stuff about real estate today. What do you think has been your most challenging aspect of it, of owning and investing in multifamily?
The most challenging thing that has been for me was figuring out how to work with partners, right? And what do I mean by that? So I mean, like, there's times where me and my partners may disagree on something, right? And I will, when I first got into partnerships, and this was prior to real estate, I would butt heads, try to win the argument, try to win the battle, right? And I came to the realization, especially when I got into real estate, that sometimes it's better to let your partners win that battle and you win the war. If that keeps the relationship strong, like, let them have it. It's not worth it. It's not worth damaging this partnership for that one situation, right? So I learned that early on, and it's really served me well. And now I work extremely well with a bunch of people, and I don't let my ego get in the way. I think a lot of real estate investors, they let their ego and their principle get in the way, and it really hurts them in the long run.
Trip over themselves. So the biggest challenge was figuring out how. And then when you said partners, these are your like managing members, right? Not limited partners.
I mean, it was prior to real estate. It was business partners, right? Like one of my first triplexes, I split 50-50 with somebody. We butted heads a lot because we wanted to manage this asset in a different way. Right. And I learned a lot of things from that particular partnership, where it's like, if I'm going to partner with somebody, I have to have shared values. I have to have shared ethics. I have to like we have to be on the same page originally, because if we don't have shared ethics, if you're not strong in ethics and values, like, and you don't align with my ultimate vision of like buy and hold and not like a quick buck and like long-term wealth building, then we're not a good match for partner. Simple as that.
It's a very good point. Set up your expectations, right? And I'm just repeating this for clarity. Set your expectations with your partners before you get in bed with them. It's like having premarital counseling for those. Make sure we agree on when this begins, what's going to happen in the middle, and at what point does it end, or does it not? And how fast. And I learned that from watching other people do that. That was one of those ones like a smart man learns from his mistakes and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. I just saw that happen with too much. I'm like, all right, I'm going to tell all my investors to get them ready before I even have a deal. So this is what I'm thinking. would you want to hold this for like 30 years? And everyone's like, actually, yeah. Because in EO, we're all entrepreneurs and most of us don't have real 401ks or don't trust it, or we trust in ourselves more than we trust in anything else on our ability to problem solve and make money. We don't want a 401k to do it. So we're like, well, best thing they can to defend against that is real estate. It's stable on a long enough timeline. Los Angeles, it's always going up usually. And we only buy in areas where that's appreciation's on not like on a fast arc like Vegas is like does this, but it just continually goes up. And we value add the heck out of stuff. So we'll find stuff and tear everything out, put $30,000 into a unit and make it a brand new place. Like long-term hold aspect is a big thing. And on my side, the mindset is we want to make it better. Like I want to leave this place better. It's a 1954 building, and I want to bring it back to life. It's the ugliest thing on the block. I'm going to do the neighborhood a favor. That's how I think. I want to do some justice. Like they're going to pay more rents, but then they're going to get something for that because I'm going to put a washer dryer in here. I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to do renovations that last 10 years, like bomb-proof renovations. But we're going to do them well, repipe and all the way down, so that they actually get the value they're paying. And then that, I think, raises the entire neighborhood up. And like, if everybody did one, all landlords did one to that to each building, the neighborhoods would get better and better, and you wouldn't have like these slumlords and lawsuits and all that stuff going around. But unfortunately, that's not always the mindset, as you well know, I'm sure. Given your involvement in the Boston real estate market, what trends are you seeing that are shaping your side of your coast? I'd love to know, because California, it's a whole different story over here. What are you seeing in the Boston real estate market that is shaping the future of the multifamily where you are?
Lack of housing. I mean, I'm sure you're in a similar situation in California, but the regulatory requirements out here are so high that it's really challenging to build new stuff, right? So as a result, like the older stuff is, I think it's like 1980s and 1980s and above is considered new in Massachusetts, because there's so little construction, because I guess numbers don't make sense. You're paying $300 a square foot, like, and with the rents are a certain level, it's like, it literally doesn't make sense.
No.
So it's like, so that means that like, it's hard to find rentals, right? And then the properties that I have are more valuable now, right? So Massachusetts was very insulated during 2022 and 2023, and prices were going down. They were staying stagnant, or they were going up, right? Because the need for apartments and the lack of new construction was the cause of that.
That doesn't sound like much of a different story over here, guys. It's a good problem for us, right? As syndicators and property managers, like housing is needed and getting more so. The new construction starts report, like permits pulled in like Southern California for this year are the lowest they've been, I think, since the Great Recession. So that means in 4 more years, it's going to be another like big time supply issue, because there's things being delivered right now. We don't have enough, and it's not enough now. And one of our problems here is you have to build massive and expensive for it to make sense, because it has to be super high end luxury, or it's not worth doing because of the regulatory issues. It's not easy to build over here either. It's not at all that easy. And you have these expensive, like everyone's got a tax on something, and then never mind rent control, which is the worst thing in the world.
Thankfully, we don't have that in Mass. Thankfully.
Thank everything that you don't have that to deal with. That is, despite all economic studies and reports and every study done over time that says this does not work, including Berkeley, who's about as like left as it gets, it's like, it doesn't work. There's all these economic reports. It actually has a reverse effect. Like, for instance, West Hollywood, some of the hardest rent control here in the LA metro, and it has the highest price. It has like gnarliest rent control. Like you can't raise rents hardly ever. That and Santa Monica. Yet their average rent price is the highest price per square foot.
Wow.
Both of them. Rent control works, right? See
Yeah.
Santa Monica. I'm looking at you. You too, West Hollywood. I mean, so last question that we hit a rapid fire round. I will let you go because time flies when you're having fun, especially when we talk about real estate. So what advice, Andrew, would you give to someone interested in getting into the syndication space? Let's call it that. Let's be specific. Like if someone wants to, they don't have enough money to buy a fourplex because they don't have family money like that, so they're going to need to syndicate. And at least in California, I think it's nationally, it's much easier to syndicate a 5-unit than it is a 4 because you don't have Fannie and Freddie. Commercial starts at 5 units. So for a new syndicator that's was like you and me, like, how am I going to get money for this and house hacking? And you have a lot of advice, but what would be the one thing? Where would you have them start?
I would just have them start by showing credibility and investing their own money in the deal, right? And what I mean by that, so it's like you find a 5 or 6plex, you can joint venture that. You can split it with 2 or 3 buddies, right? Start showing the world you know what you're gonna do and share with the world. Put it out in the world. And once you start building that credibility, once you start building that brand, people are gonna want to give you money because they see your success. But nobody's gonna want to give you money if you have no track record. Simple as that. I wouldn't want to give you money. I don't think Trevor would want to give you money. Like you got to create a track record to be able to raise money for these deals, right?
Right.
So that could be my.
How do you create the track record when you don't have one?
There's multiple ways. You can move to a market where you can house hack like I did, right? Or you can invest out of state. Or you could joint venture on a 5 or 6plex with 3 or 4 or 5 buddies, right? Like there's ways to do it. You know, you just have to think creatively. And you just have to find a yes when you keep hearing no. I mean, I think that's the biggest tip in real estate is when I hear no, that incentivizes me to find a yes. That incentivizes me to make 20 more calls to hear that yes from somebody else.
That's right. It's like when I hear the word impossible. I'm like, no, you can't do that, man. That's impossible. I'm like, say that just one more time and I'll make sure I do it. Make sure we find a way to do that.
Totally.
So thank you for sharing that, Andrew. And I think one of the most interesting things I saw from this conversation was your willingness to move to the middle of wherever, where nobody is, and no friends, and no connections, and that's where you buy. That's some freaking cojones. That's some grit to do that. I mean, there's not too many people that would, because you're going, all right, and that makes complete sense too, but you got to figure out the market, and since it has its own challenges, but you're going to have, if you come in with someone from the city who's knows what's been going, if you've been dealing with trying to get deals in a city environment, it's dog eat dog, this, and you go out to the suburbs, I guess it is, or a little further out, you don't have real estate professionals hunting down stuff. It's just families who've owned things for generations perhaps. And so you can find deals, I imagine, in a much different and maybe even more.
I didn't only move out to this place, I became one of the top investors in this place. I host the largest real estate meetup.
That's crazy. How big is the town, right? It's a small town.
It's like, 250,000 people.
Yeah.
Like I became an investor-focused brokerage, work with only investors. Like I'm well known in this area in a matter of 3 years because I put the work in, because I put the reps in, and because I did things that others were unwilling to do. One
of the coolest real estate investment strategies I have heard yet, and I've not heard the move to somewhere. You did your due diligence. I'm sure you were looking at the markets there and picked it, but to actually go there, because that's the freedom you have as a single man. When it's harder. You could do that. I could go do that with my family, but it'd be a lot harder to pull my 7 and 11-year-old out of school, take my way, go move out to Missoula, Montana or something. Your opportunity is your station in life right now, and you did that intentionally. I love it. I mean, that is freaking awesome. And just like you said, you built your network by telling everybody about it. Like you didn't come in well known. You just made yourself known, like coming on random podcasts like mine, because it's just getting out there and being consistent, right? Laughing at the world and life, because life's not too serious, right? It's fun. To keep it fun, or why be here?
And stay positive.
Yeah,
stay positive.
Gotta stay positive, because happiness is a choice, right? It's a choice.
Totally.
Right. All right. Rapid fire question round. Talk as much as you want or as little as you want. That's the next one.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's rock and roll. All right, here we go, Andrew. Question 1, rapid fire round. If you had to describe your investment strategy in one word, what would it be?
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Question 2. What's one travel destination on your bucket list?
Tokyo.
Tokyo. 3.
I'm sorry. I'm sticking to the one word. You told me one word. I'm just following your rules,
that was just the first one. That was the first one.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Just the one word on the first question. You don't have to be the one word the rest.
Okay.
I gotta clarify. Sorry. What recent tech innovation do you see making the biggest impact on real estate?
Virtual assistants. They're a freaking game changer. What really allowed me to grow in real estate was figuring out what takes away energy away from me and putting people or systems in place to get that away from me and put it on somebody else's plate, as well as taking away low dollar per hour tasks. And virtual assistants are fantastic at doing that. And if you're not using virtual assistants in your life, you're missing out. Like I pay them $5, $6 an hour, which is fantastic pay where they are in the Philippines, yet they take so much off my plate that I literally can't imagine my life without them right now.
We have them as well. Right there with you. I would 100% agree. It's like almost like you don't want to tell people too much, right? It's like a secret. What's the one tech tool or app that is essential to your everyday business?
I mean, there's a bunch, right? I'd probably say Google Drive. Just being able to collaborate and share documents on there and share underwriting and have a shared folder for all of your, business documents, your SOPs, your leases, like. It's incredibly helpful for growing your business. I also like ChatGPT. It helps you. I don't use it to write things for me, but I use it to edit. Right? I use it to, I'll do the draft for an investor communication. I'll make it sound pretty. Right? It saves me, 30 minutes, an hour on just basic communications. Right? So, those are kind of some of the systems that I leverage to save me time, as well as to, I would probably say those 2 ones. Yeah.
Favorite book of all time? Don't say Rich Dad Poor Dad. You
I have a ton of favorite books. I'd probably say one of my top favorite, because it's hard to choose, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That book is incredibly useful, not just how to be effective, but how to live a great life, right? And I think one of the main concepts in there is like, think with the end in mind, right? And that concept alone really kind of cements the idea of like long-term gratification versus short-term gratification. And truly, that's what determines successful people versus not successful people, is seeing the long-term benefit and ignoring the short-term benefit.
What one habit or stack of habits do you employ to set yourself up for success every day?
Every single morning, I do the Miracle Morning.
Miracle Morning. Break the Miracle Morning down for those who haven't read that book.
The Miracle Morning is a morning routine where the founder of this routine essentially identified the 6 habits that the most highly effective people in the world do. And it's this acronym SAVERS. S for silence or meditation, A for affirmation, B for visualization, E for exercising, R for reading, S for scribing or journaling, right? So I do that every single morning. I wake up at about 4 a.m. I spend about 2 or 3 hours towards this self-development, and it really sets me up in the day and really sets me to have positive mood throughout the day, because as you know, real estate is 100% a relationship game, and you have to address it in a positive and a good mentality. Otherwise, it's going to hurt your business and going to hurt your long-term goals.
Love it. Last question. This one's open-ended. What would you like to share with the world who's listening?
Say me and Trevor, we're nobody special. We're just like you. Like, all you really need to do is you just need a burning desire for a dream. You just need a laser consciousness on that dream and that vision. Go after it and let nothing stop you. And if you have that laser consciousness, anything is possible.
That's one of the best answers I've ever heard. That's awesome, Andrew. Laser focus, man. That is it. It's tenacity and consistency.
Totally.
Absolutely. That's how I see. That's what I see in you. Just from looking at and how fast you've from 0 to 3 years in real estate. That's really fast because real estate's not a fast thing. We think things in years, not months or days, and we're not looking at stocks go up and down daily. It's like it's a first thing is 5 years is like usually the shortest we're looking at anything. So to go 3 years and be at 120 units, very commendable, my friend. And that brings us to the end of our show, Andrew. Thank you for coming on and spending your time with me. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Anyone in your area that comes across this, how do they get in contact with you? What's the best way if they're interested in like knowing more about your syndication deals?
They can find me on Instagram at Investor Freed, right? Or you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Andrew Freed. And, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to connect with other people, other investors, and, offer any insight I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having us on the show. And that's a wrap, man.